This is the Fantasy Roadshow.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Roadshow with your boys here. You can call me Truck. I am at home today, and I'm joined, as always, by the infamous Shane O'Mac. And today we are talking Dynasty Quarterback rankings. Going to mention some buy low, sell high candidates. Just talk about the movement from last year into this year. I'd like to formally welcome everybody to Dynasty season. It has officially begun. This is the time of the season where you need to reevaluate your roster from last year, kind of work on improving little by little as you can. In a later episode, I'm gonna show my personal lineups in Dynasty. Shane and I will talk about them, and maybe Shane could showcase a couple of his star-studded Dynasty rosters himself. But before we get into it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media, follow the Substack, thefantasyroadshow.substack.com for all of our written articles. Other than that, Shane, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. I was just thinking, this week I was like, this would be such a sucky, slow time if you weren't involved in Dynasty at all or invested in Dynasty at all.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time of the year where you just forget about football, right? You work on other things in life or other hobbies that you picked up, or watching basketball, UFC, whatnot. There's always some sports going on, but this is Dynasty. This is for the sickos, Still talking football. It is February 23rd, and we are talking 2025 NFL season. So, I'm excited, man. Anything going on new in your life, Shane?
No, I am just watching here, February 23rd, watching all here in Kansas, the snow melt. We've been pounded here over the last week, like below freezing temperatures. So I am gladly awaiting the snow to be done and out of my way. I hate it. There's nothing I like about it. I know there's people out there that love to watch the snow, and it's so relaxing and everything. And I'm just the opposite. I can't stand it.
Snow is fun in the beginning of winter, before you really have to shovel too much, before you really have to snow plow, and before you're having trouble with your car in the morning and in the snow days. So, I'm sick of it. I hope this is the end of it. We're encroaching March, and in Chicago, you still get that residual winter in March, excuse me. And I'm hoping it's the end of it. When is Groundhog's Day? I can't.
We already did that. Yeah, we already passed it.
Did he see a shadow?
Yeah, I can't remember what he did, but I don't know.
I didn't hear anything about it.
No,
nothing. It was completely in and out of my life. So, hopefully spring is around the corner. But anyway, we're talking Dynasty quarterback rankings. We're going to get right into it. We have our list here, our rankings of the top 34 quarterbacks in Dynasty currently. The top of the list should be no surprise, but we're not going to go through and talk in depth of each ranking like we did in previous years. I feel like that's a bit dry. So, we're going to showcase a couple of guys here we want to talk about, maybe some big movements. We have our 2024 right around this time last year, including some rookies. But prior to the season starting, this was our Dynasty ranking. So fun to look back and kind of revisit and reevaluate where they were last year and where they are this year. So, we'll get right into it, Shane. If you got nothing else, Josh Allen won MVP this year. A lot of people said that was should have been Lamar Jackson. Lamar did have 434 fantasy points this year to Josh Allen's 385. Do you think it was right on the money that Josh Allen won?
I think so. I think two things are true. Yes, I would have voted for Josh Allen. I also think that had Lamar Jackson not ever won an MVP, he probably would have been voted the MVP.
Yeah, I can get behind that. A lot of time you have the voters fatigue.
Yeah.
Right. When we talked about it when Patrick Mahomes first started. We're like, he should win MVP every year. And he's not going to, because they're going to give it to someone else. So I'm happy that Josh Allen won. I thought he deserved it. Yeah. I still have him as my QB1, as do you. Last year we had him at QB1 as well, both of us. So not much changing there. Josh Allen is a stud. He will be. He's the most the highest ticket item that you want. But I have Lamar Jackson ahead of Jaden Daniels, and you have them swapped. I get it. Jaden Daniels had an amazing rookie year, but we saw what CJ Stroud did his rookie year as well. Followed it up with a sophomore slump. I'm not projecting Jaden to have a sophomore slump. I'm just not ready to put him above Lamar Jackson, who, like I said, had 434 fantasy points this season. You know what I mean? Like, Lamar is in the prime of his career, many seasons left. I'm not ready to put him down. I do love what Jaden Daniels did, but I mean, why did you put Jaden over Lamar? Any specific reason?
So I think a couple of things, like one, like, okay, so he had 25 passing touchdowns. I think he jumps over 30 this year. Year two, I don't see the rushing going down that much. And I really think that I don't have any insider knowledge, but I think they're going to add some big weapon. I think they're adding either T. Higgins or a Debo Samuel or somebody. They're going to add somebody across from Scary Terry that's just only going to boost up his value probably for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, if you're the Commanders, you need to do that, right? You have to get him another weapon. Terry McLaurin's great. He had a great season. We'll talk about him in the wide receiver rankings episode, but yeah, you need to bring in someone else. I personally don't think – I feel like T. Higgins is going to get re-signed to the Bengals. I think Joe Burrow is going to restructure his contract, and they're going to retain T. I think they need to. He's a big part of their offense. But aside from that, I do think Jaden will get another piece. He'll get another weapon with that passing game. So, no, they're very comparable. I mean, Jaden Daniels, his rookie year, 3,500 passing yards, had – 891 rushing yards with 6 rushing touchdowns, more touchdowns, less yards than Lamar. But I mean, what was Lamar Jackson doing his first few seasons? They were not what Jaden Daniels did. You know what I mean? So, he was right around 3,000 passing yards. I think the last 2 seasons were his best so far in Baltimore. But, Jaden is he's just taking it up a notch, right? He's raising the bar a little bit for those quarterbacks. So, I can understand where you're coming from. I'm not ready to put him there. I would still rather have Lamar over Jaden. So, anybody else in this top 10 that you're surprised jumped up there from last year, or any notable person you want to talk about?
Well, I don't think that jumped up really. Like, I think – we both had Caleb at a similar spot, I think, last year, right? I think we both had him in the top 8 or so.
7, and you had him at 8.
Yeah, so
this year we have him at 7 and 7. So
I'm not surprised. I think if we hadn't seen the coach come there and Ben Johnson that did, I don't know if we'd have him inside our top 10. I think he showed big time game capabilities last year. And I think, Ben Johnson took Jared Goff to whole new levels. I think he could do the same for Caleb. I really liked what we saw from Caleb. It seemed like towards the middle, the latter part of the year with his rushing, we started to see more rushing from him. I think the guy I want to get your opinion on too, because you briefly mentioned it when we talked about Jaden Daniels, is CJ Stroud, who we both had so high, like in the top 5, I believe.
And you had him at 4, I had him at 5. Yes, he was the top 5 dynasty quarterback going into last season.
I think he wasn't as good. I think Joe Mixon took away some fantasy production. So I'm curious to see if he can pop back in the top 10 with the new offensive scheme and coordinator coming in this year, or do we have him properly placed?
I personally want to move him up, right? Yeah. So as a little foreshadowing, I'm going to have him as a buy low candidate this offseason. I'll be looking to acquire CJ Stroud. His price is probably the cheapest it's going to be, because I think he will bounce back next year. I do believe in that talent and his ability to get the ball to those receivers. It's really about the health of that team, right? I mean, Stephon Diggs going down, Nico Collins going down at times, Tank Dell again going down. So if they have a healthy season with all those guys, I think CJ Stroud has a much better season. But I mean, we did see the floor of CJ Stroud, in my opinion, right? Yeah. CJ ended up as quarterback 18 this past year, still at 3,700 passing yards. I mean, that's still really good for a bad season. You know what I mean? His only 13 fantasy points per game, which is rather low. Very tough on a per game basis. But again, it's the health of the team. And obviously with Joe Mixon, that was a big portion of it. You mentioned Joe Mixon. When you have a strong running game like that, it should be able to help you exceed the passing as well. So Yeah, I'm bullish on CJ Stroud this offseason, to answer your question.
Yeah, I just I want to think like there's a bounce back, but then you mentioned it too, is like the weapons. Like I don't see Stephon Diggs coming back. I don't know if we see Tank Dell at all in 2025. I mean,
Is
that
that the
was
timetable? Is he out for the whole season?
I think they're saying there's possibility of at least half the season. It was so gruesome. I think what I've heard is maybe it could be on the high side. It could be he comes back in a similar time frame that we saw Nick Chubb come back from.
Okay,
And that was like around midway. So that's my concern. Now, maybe they address that whether in free agency or the draft. We'll see. But I do believe, like, if you're in Dynasty, probably now is the time to pounce. Like, if you're going to try to make a move, this is probably the lowest his value will ever be.
Yeah, that's my point, right? After a terrible season, you could probably get him for a good price right now. Yeah. So, and I would be willing to invest in the stock of CJ Stroud because I do think they're going to figure it out. With DeMeco Ryans, what they did that rookie year was very special. And I feel like, after a bad season, they can come back and have a bounce back. So, yeah, I like CJ Stroud. I had a tough time with Drake Maye. I know we have them both at 10, and Drake Maye ended up this season at quarterback 23. He didn't start really until week 6. So I mean, that's the majority of the season. He didn't play the first 5 games, but I mean, still quarterback 23, and everyone's extremely bullish on him. I think we're banking on the Patriots finding another wide receiver this year in the draft, maybe bringing one in as well. I mean, I don't know. How did you feel about putting Drake Maye in the top 10 there?
Yeah, I feel I kind of looked at last year. Like I was kind of impressed what he did. Like he probably had the worst offensive line and worst offensive line, worst set of offensive weapons, and maybe the worst coaching that he'll ever have at any point in his career. He still had, I think it was 6 games of 30 yards or more rushing. So he's going to give you a safe baseline. I think Josh McDaniels coming in as offensive coordinator is a good thing. He made Matt Jones look pretty decent, and nobody's been able to do that since then. And then, like you said, I think they're a candidate for something happening in free agency. If T. Higgins is available, they're probably making a strong run. A Deebo Samuel, maybe they're taking T-Mac from Arizona in the draft. They've got to make something happen on the offensive side. So I think like that rushing ability, like there's a guy we'll probably talk about later too. Like anytime you've got a pretty safe floor with the rushing, I'm going to probably be buying into them.
Yeah, I mean, he shocked me with how mobile he was. Drake Maye. Yeah. There was a couple times, I'm a gambling man, and there was a point in the season where I was like, dude, take the over on Drake Maye rushing. It was, you're right. A lot of games over 30 yards. Yeah, here's the thing. We're banking on the Patriots to figure it out at wide receiver to get him more weapons, right? And will that happen? We'll see. As of right now, I feel like I have him a little too high, personally. I would be able to move him down a couple spots, maybe under Baker, right around the Kyler Murray, Jared Goff range right now currently. When they make some adjustments, I can move him up, and I'll view him as a different quarterback. He showed a lot of glimpses. It has a good arm and, a very bright future, but we're just banking on the team to figure it out. So a lot of offseason left. He could easily be a guy that moves up or down in my board. So, I don't know. I just had a tough time with him.
Yeah.
All right. So what are we doing about Patrick Mahomes? I mean, I feel like we need to talk about this because Patrick Mahomes, I had a couple conversations with the buddies of mine telling me that Patrick Mahomes is washed. He still finished as quarterback 11 this year. Okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? So even with a bad season, this was his worst season. He's right around, quarterback 8, quarterback 1, quarterback 4, quarterback 11. So would you say this is his floor?
Yeah, I think I think he's one of the safest to be in the top 8 or 9. I just probably what we're not going to see from him anymore that we see from the guys we have in the top 5 is you're not going to see those big 30-plus point games from him anymore. Josh Allen gave you, I think, like a 30, a 40, and then he had that 54-point game. Like, I don't feel like we're probably going to get a lot of those, but we may get if you're taking the baseball analogy, we're going to probably get a lot of singles and doubles, just not a lot of like home runs there. I just don't feel like I'm bullish on, like, okay, I loved what I saw from Xavier Worthy in his rookie year. Rashee Rice, I did see news that they're not expecting to have any legal consequences in 2025. So he comes back.
That's good.
We'll see here in the next 2 weeks what decision Travis Kelce makes.
I feel like he's back. I feel like he's made enough comments. He's made enough comments, especially with the way the season ended. If they would have won 3 in a row, I could see Kelce walking off into the sunset, doing his own thing, hosting game shows. Have you watched that game show, by the way? Are you smarter than a celebrity?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, he's hosting a game show now. Are you smarter than a celebrity? I haven't watched it at all. Can't speak on it too much, but he's doing other things. So I think he's still hungry. I mean, whether he's capable of having another 1,000-yard season, we'll talk about him at a later episode with tight ends. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes. Look, he might be a buy low candidate for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think whoever had him last season in your dynasty league probably pissed off. And I mean, look, he didn't finish inside the top 10 until week 9. He was right around like quarterback 15. Like in a 2 quarterback league, sure, but in a 1 quarterback league, you're like, he was, hardly startable. Only had about 4 games inside the top 10. Just I don't know. I think with Rashee Rice coming back, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood, I don't know if they're going to keep him for another season. I don't know what his contract situation is, but I'd be fine investing in Patrick Mahomes. And he's a big name, so it's one of those things where he had a bad season, but it's Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean? So it's like, could you really get him for a buy low? I'm not too sure. That's something you got to have a conversation with your league mate, whoever owns him, and test the waters on that one, because I didn't put him down as a buy low, but based on the season he had last year, that was bad. That was bad. So, all right, Shane. Anybody else you wanted to mention here in the later ranges? I mean, I'll just talk about Brock Purdy. Are we concerned at all? What is our gauge? What is our level of holy shit, what are we going to do with Brock Purdy? Still had a decent season. I mean, quarterback 14, almost 4,000 yards passing. What's going to happen? Because I personally think Christian McCaffrey, he's going to come back next year, and he's going to be ready to go. He's going to be hungry. Deebo Samuel is likely gone, right? Everything we were hearing about it. He is gone, but you still got George Kittle and you still got Brandon Ayuk. So you got plenty of weapons.
Juwan Jennings, who had some really big games.
Juwan Jennings, absolutely. He was a big piece.
Yeah, Ricky Pearsall looked good in some limited action.
Have you heard any of the rumblings about Aaron Rodgers going to the 49ers? You heard about that too?
Yeah, I think it's going to be coming down to, like, I felt like the 90% he was going to be back with the Niners is why I ranked him where I did. But I think now, like, with certain people like Rodgers becoming available and Cousins becoming available and Sam Darnold going to be available, like, I feel like if he starts to stay at a number that's way too high, if he starts to get near Dak's number, I could see them like saying, you know what, let's go with Aaron Rodgers for 1 year to get us by.
I mean, that's the thing. When is Brock due for a contract? I think he has another year, right?
It's
only his second year.
No.
He's third year. So this is 2025 is his 4th season. Yeah. So he is due for a contract after this year. I just feel like he's going to want a lot of money.
Right.
And I don't think he's worth it. No, I think his asking prices is going to be above his play price,
And I think we could all, like, we would agree, like, if he ends up in some place this year besides San Francisco, we're lowering him immediately, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, that'll be his chance to prove whether or not he's a system guy. And, he did what he did because of the players around him or not. But, I mean, I feel like that kind of showcased this year without Brandon Ayuk and Deebo not doing much.
Yeah.
Kittle still had a phenomenal year, but I'm concerned about Brock Purdy's longevity in the NFL.
Yeah.
You know,
The only other guy that stands out to me that I think I'll probably be making some adjustments to in my ranks in the next week or so, I think it's an oversight, is I think I probably need to bring up Baker Mayfield a little bit. If you look at what he's done to his last 2 years, I mean, it's been better than Mahomes' 2 years. I mean,
quarterback 10 last year and quarterback, where is he at? Quarterback 4 this year.
Yeah.
Like ever since he joined Tampa Bay, right? And Godwin, I heard Godwin's still ready to come back next year with Tampa. Baker is one of those guys that he's really good, right, with this team. So I like Baker. I would be very happy if I had Baker going into the season.
Yep.
And if I could acquire him, I mean, it'd be probably tough to get him now because of the year he had. But if I could get him on my roster, I'd be happy about it.
Yeah, and I'm not concerned like the coordinator loss, because he had that happen last year when Canales left and it didn't phase him. Even if Godwin's not back, I'm not that concerned, because McMillan looked really good last year in his rookie year.
I agree with that completely. Yeah, and I mean Bucky Irving.
Bucky,
when you got players like Bucky on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with Rashad White, but Bucky's really good. So, I wanted to put Baker higher. I really did. I mean, having him as quarterback 12 right now seems a little low with what he did last year, did the year before. I mean, the guy, it's hard not to like Baker Mayfield. You know what I mean? I feel like the majority of the people that watch football, they're like, dude, Baker is a dog. So, yeah, I love that. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some buy low, sell high candidates. Yep. Shane, we got a couple guys here, and I'll just start with CJ Stroud. I mentioned it. I gave a little foreshadowing. I think CJ Stroud, the better seasons are ahead. If you can get him now for the low, I definitely would. I think with a healthy team, like I said, he should have a better season. I feel like his rookie year was his ceiling, and last year was his floor. So anywhere in between there, I'm happy with. I think CJ Stroud could be a lot better than he was last year. So, what about your guy Drake Maye?
So I talked about Drake. I mean, I know much to cover there. Talked about him a little bit before, so I'll just move on to Bryce Young. Like I have to say, like last year going in the season, I wasn't very high on Young. Like I didn't see a lot there, and it kind of played out at the beginning of the season, and then it's almost like that 3 or 4 game benching for Dalton was like a really positive for him. And like, so I think we see like a second year leap from him with Canales again in year 2. I think that's a big thing. I think they probably are candidate. They could be someone that drafts a T-Mac from Arizona or a Luther Burden from Missouri. I liked what I saw like rushing from him. He had, I think it was 6 or 7 rushing touchdowns. He was running a lot more last year than we saw in his rookie year. So I like that. I like the division. The division historically is not that tough. I don't think it's going to be that tough this year as far as defenses he's faced. So especially like if you're in a 2 quarterback dynasty league, that's someone I would probably be looking to acquire.
Yeah, I mean the way he finished the season was just so impressive. After getting benched early on, I mean, he finished the season with three games inside the top 10, and a couple of those were quarterback 2, quarterback 1, multiple passing touchdowns. His rushings were off the charts right around then. In those games that I'm referring to, he had the majority of his rushing touchdowns. He had 5 rushing touchdowns in the back half of the season. So I think, I'd love to get our guy Elite Kennedy on and talk about the Panthers, because we had him on early on in the season last year talking about Bryce getting benched and the struggles that they had. I can't wait to hear what he says about the end of that season, because I would be happy if I was a Panthers fan with the way they finished off. So
yeah,
I agree with you. I think Bryce is a great buy low candidate in a 2 quarterback league. I'd be looking to acquire him for sure. Caleb Williams, I don't really have to talk too much about Caleb. This is mainly because of the offensive coordinator. So I'm getting a phone call and just totally deranged my thoughts there. But the offensive coordinator is the reason why you might not be able to buy him low. I mean, what we saw last year, 68 sacks. He's holding on the ball too long. The offensive system with the quarterback or with the coaches, all around was bad. It was bad news all around. So for him to have the season that he had with all of those problems. Like, he ended up as quarterback 16, 3,500 yards. Like, Jaden Daniels had 3,568, 3,568 yards. Caleb Williams, 3,541 yards. Very comparable. The rushing side of it, I mean, he had half of the yards that Jaden did, but still, he's not that mobile of a quarterback like Jaden. But still, to have the problems that he had, yet still throwing for 3,500 passing yards is intriguing. Bring in Ben Johnson. You're going to redo a lot of the stuff that we did last year and bring in a whole new system. So if you can get Caleb Williams on a buy low option because of the season that he had last year, or people having a sour taste in their mouth, probably not in Chicago. The Chicago leagues all still love Caleb, and it's going to be hard to get him. But leagues elsewhere, they probably have a bad taste in their mouth about Caleb. I mean, when people talk about rookie quarterback rankings at the end of the season, Caleb's all the way down, right? I mean, people are putting Drake Maye above Caleb Williams, and I'm just not ready to do that yet as a Chicago Bears fan. But
think about like the coaching he had. I mean, I think when I looked at, like, he still had, I think it was 3 fantasy games where he was like 25 points or over. He still gave you some big games, and that was like with the absolute worst coaching. Whether if it was with Eberflus to start the year, or then, when they fired Eberflus and they fired his offensive coordinator and had interim people in both positions. I mean, he's not going to have. So, he no matter who was hired, he was going to have better coaching. But now you're giving him the best play caller we've seen in the last 2 years. I mean, there was a lot of hype last year for him, but now this is legitimate hype, should be for him.
We'll talk about it at a later date, but the hype scares me. Okay. As a Chicago fan, I can't deal with off-season hype anymore. Right. I mean, having the most hype out of any coach coming in, it's like expectations are so high. Don't want to get let down again. So that scares me. But what about Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, so for me, this is almost a similar option. Like, you're never going to get Trevor Lawrence at as low a value as he is now. Like, he only played 10 games last year. He had that shoulder injury. He's got a much better, I think, play caller coming in as a head coach in Cohen. Duval.
So that's a riot.
He'll. I think that's an upgrade as far as a play caller. I think he's got probably one of the absolute top 5 young explosive receivers in Brian Thomas Jr. Coming in. I think they are in a similar situation as far as I was just talking about Bryce Young. The division's not tough, so when you're facing those division opponents twice a year, that's helpful. I just think, like Bryce Young, you'll never see his value this low. I think there's a pretty big ceiling there for a bounce back year this year.
I don't know what to think about this whole Trevor and the Jags situation. I am not sold on Liam Cohen coming in and having this team be good. The comments, the Duval thing, it was funny. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know, man. I mean, Travis Etienne, not Trevor. Trevor's coming into the NFL, but Travis, with his downfall last year, I don't know, man. Brian Thomas Jr. is such a good piece to this offense that he's going to be a massive part of Trevor Lawrence's ascension. But I don't know, man. It's like one of those things where how long are we going to say Trevor Lawrence has upside when he doesn't show it?
I just think, compare him to who we just talked about, CJ Stroud. Like, Lawrence didn't have nearly as bad of points per game as Stroud did. I mean, Lawrence still had, I think, 3 games over 21 points. I don't think Stroud even had a game over 19 last year. He gets an offensive play calling coach. Stroud is still with DeMeco Ryans. Lawrence has got better offensive weapons currently, I think, as a whole. I mean, you could say Nico and Thomas are probably even, but I think when you factor in Evan Ingram and probably what else, whether it's Christian Kirk or who else they're going to add there, he's got a better set of weapons. I just feel like this is, if we think Stroud's a bounce back, I think Lawrence for sure is.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I just, like I said, I need to see Trevor do it eventually. I mean, we're talking going into his 5th season, right?
Yeah, sounds
Started in
right. Because he
2021.
he got re-signed. Yeah.
Yeah. So he got a bag. Only played half the season this year. He did have more fantasy points per game than CJ Stroud. You're right. He was at 15. Stroud was at 13. Not much there, but it was more. So no, you're right though. I mean, Brian Thomas, he's such a good wide receiver, man.
Oh,
He's so good. So
good.
yeah, I can get behind Trevor being a buy low. Sell high. I got Bo Nix here. I'm not sold on Bo Nix being a top 10 fantasy quarterback perennially, year in and year out. Like I talked about CJ Stroud, right? CJ Stroud hit a terrible sophomore slump. Those sophomore slumps are pretty real. Bo Nix, you got tape on him now. I don't know. This is more of I have no idea what quarterback Bo Nix is on a seasonal basis. He had a great rookie year. It was very impressive. Ended up as a top 10 quarterback. I'm just not sold on it. I'm not. And I'm not sure why. Shane, am I crazy for thinking that?
I think two things I like about him when you compare him to Stroud. One, I think, is a big one. Like when you're talking to Dynasty, so we're saying at least for the next 2 or 3 years, he has a superior head coach and play caller in Sean Payton as opposed to a defensive coach. And now what we know is not a great play caller. Bobby Slowick was let go. But two, I think, he offers so much more rushing capability than Stroud did. I mean, when you're talking about, I think he had like 500 yards rushing and like 5 rushing touchdowns. When you have that as the baseline, and then looking at him maybe going to the 30 touchdown mark to add on to it, that's such a high floor for him. I don't think the rushing's going away. I think they know that that's a part of him and it's a weapon. That's what I like over Stroud. As far as Stroud really didn't give you much rushing capability.
Bo did it in spurts, right? Ended up with 430 and 4, so not 5 and 5, but 430 and 4. Still very close, but I mean, he did it some games and he didn't some games. Like he had one game 75 yards rushing on 10 rushes. Incredible. But then a lot of games, 2 rushes, 5 yards, 2 rushes, 5 yards. So you're right, though. It is a big part of his game, and they should incorporate that. And I feel like they will after what they saw this year. And Cortland Sutton is a great receiver with him. So I don't know, man. Maybe I just need to see it for another year for me to believe in it. But if I had Bo Nix on my roster that I picked up in the rookie round last year, and I probably have 2 other quarterbacks that I believe in, maybe a little bit higher, I'd be fine selling Bo Nix personally to somebody who was really high on him. So I'll find out if I have him in any leagues I'm in with you, and then you can go ahead and trade for him. What about Kyler Murray? Talk to me about Kyler.
Yeah, I really expected more last year, honestly, from Kyler. Like I thought Marvin Harrison was going to elevate him as far as passing numbers. He's very similar almost now to what I was talking about Mahomes. Like we don't get any of those high level QB1 really high scoring games where he goes over 30 points. Like I'm almost positive he didn't have a game last year that was 30 or more points. Like he doesn't give you the top high level explosive plays. And then last year we saw like there was a lot of times where he gave you that 13, 14 or less points too. So he gave you the really low, like CJ Stroud levels. And then I just wonder, like, if we're going to start to see less and less rushing from him, which is going to probably mean you're never going to see those high level games again. So I think we've probably seen him. Why I've got him kind of in this range as a sell high is we probably have already seen the peak of Kyler Murray.
I mean, yes, I would agree with that. His first 2 seasons were his best, right? Mm-hmm. Since then, last year and the year before that was pretty bad. Quarterback 20 didn't play hardly any games. Played 8 games 2 years ago, 11 the year before that. So, last year 500 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns, 3,800 yards, 20 touchdowns. I don't know. I mean, Kyler, I'd be fine selling Kyler. I would. I mean, if someone would be able to give me enough for him, I'd be fine selling him. I don't know what to think about this Cardinals team, right? James Conner probably doesn't have much life left in him. Marvin Harrison is he's good. He showed a lot this past season, but definitely did not exceed expectations by any means. Yeah. So, yeah, I could get behind that. Kyler Murray is so high.
Yeah, 6 games of 14 points or less. That's not good.
Yeah, 14 points or less. Still had 18 fantasy points per game. So 18.1 in the higher end of fantasy points per game. Where did he finish? Quarterback 14 in fantasy points per game. Yeah. So, yeah, I can get on board with that. Jared Goff, we both have Jared Goff here as a sell high. And my whole thing with Jared Goff, losing Ben Johnson, that might take a big hit with this offense, right? I don't know too much about the offensive coordinator they have coming in. Have you heard what his background is, or do you know anything about him off the top of your head?
No, I think from what I have heard is like system staying the same, so nothing's going to change like that. But when we'll see where he's ranked by a lot of consensus, but he finished what I think was QB 5 or 6 last year.
QB 6.
So QB 6, it's hard for me to see that happening again. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is ascending. I mean, so he's only kind of probably going to get more rush opportunities when they get down the goal line. It's kind of a question mark for me, but when I look at, if you're looking at, okay, is he going to finish QB6 again? That's where I'm like, okay, this is probably the sell high. I just don't think you can oversell the loss of someone like Ben Johnson as far as a play caller.
Well, that's the thing is that's why I'm fine with him being a sell high candidate here at this point in this offseason, because I feel like we've seen his ceiling, right? Quarterback 6. That was his best fantasy finish in his entire career. Last year was quarterback 7. Both last year and this year over 4,500 passing yards, 30 and 37 touchdowns, just incredible seasons. I just don't think he can exceed that. Right. Yeah. So, I'd be fine selling him under the presumption that the Detroit Lions are still the best team in the NFC and they're going to make a run at it next year. I mean, you have all those weapons, so it's hard to see him taking a downtick, but I just feel like this offense is going to look a lot different without Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, personally. Yeah, it has to, I would imagine. I mean, the positive side, if you want to look at the positives, like all the offensive weapons are staying the same, like St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Laporta, Gibbs, Montgomery's nothing's changing as far as their weapons. So that's the positive. It's just such an unknown when you lose somebody like Ben Johnson. That's just going into the season. It's too much uncertainty.
The play caller has a lot of influence on the offense.
Yeah.
Speaking from Chicago, which our play caller was complete dog shit. So I don't know. Selling high on, I'm fine with Jared Goff. 2 back-to-back, quarterback 7 or better finishes is very impressive. Maybe you can get a little bit more from him than what you got from him in previous years. So, I think he moved up in the ranks this year, and I don't think he's going to go much higher. So if you can sell high in him now, you might be better off for it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that is our quarterback rankings for Dynasty. We will revisit this later on after the draft. We'll talk more about, movement and, a little bit more in depth with some of the guys we didn't talk about, Dak Prescott, Michael Penix, Sam Darnold, find out where these guys are going. It's going to be a fun off season, man. There's a lot still to play. So, we'll watch for it all. Next week, be on the lookout for our running back episode where we're going to do this kind of the same thing, talk about movers, risers, people who've fallen, and some buy low, sell high candidates for Dynasty as well. All right. Anything else, Shane, you want to mention before we sign off?
I don't think so. Like, subscribe. Look on, if you haven't subscribed yet to the Substack, we'll send out a Substack that's kind of got these rankings, so you can be referencing them all through the off season. We'll make updates to it. So,
also, if you guys are packaging any trades, feel free to hit us up on Twitter. shoot us an email, contact us on what we think about the trades, and we'll help you out. Like I said, I'm going to be showcasing one of my lineups next week, and Shane and I are going to talk through it, see where we can make things better, because this is a very important time in the Dynasty season where you guys kind of got to reevaluate your roster. Got to make the necessary moves in the offseason. This is crunch time. Package up some trade offers and get your league mates going, because this is the reason we play Dynasty is for this season right here, is the reevaluating the roster. So very important time. But thanks everybody for watching. Like Shane said, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. You guys are the best. Buckle up.